Now, the beginning of September normally heralds an increase in sightings of school uniforms and vehicular traffic as school resumes. The new normal of COVID-19 sees a greater emphasis on keeping schools closed, though in a physical sense. Marvin George is the Dean at the School of Drama, Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts, Jamaica, and he joins us to talk about his current efforts being an educator. So, good evening, Marvin. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon, DK.
And I'll also,
Thank you for the time.
our pleasure. What has school been like of late?
Okay. Okay, no problem. Yeah, man. Well, essentially, as you know, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago had in the first case of COVID was discovered, right? On the we shut down. Schools were shut down. At the School of Drama, and in fact, at the whole of the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts, we've been doing the teaching virtually. For the upcoming semester, which begins on the 7th of September. Our current proposal is really to do a kind of blended approach to the teaching. That is to say, all theory courses are going to be online and become 100% coursework courses. But in our case, as you know, the work is in performing arts. So physical contact is part and parcel of the work that we must do. What we've attempted to do with that is to, in understanding the social distancing protocols that must be maintained given the context we now find ourselves in, is to modify the studio courses that we would like to offer at the school. So what we're doing now is the current proposal is for 1 and 3. One class that we're calling like a master class, where we meet all students online for each studio course. We meet all students online where they're working in their respective homes and so on in spaces that they would have designated as home studios. And we broadcast the lecturer for whatever the studio course is, acting or voice and speech or movement is broadcasting from a college studio. And we do that first section with everybody. And then for the subsequent classes, because on studio courses, you do almost double the hours that you would normally do on like studio, on like a theory course, sorry. A theory course at 3 hours is a theory course at 3 credits is 3 hours. A studio course at 3 credits could be 5. So you do 2.5 in the master class, everybody, and to get your second 2.5 to make up the 5 contact hours to make your 3 credits, you do that in a face-to-face, but with reduced numbers in the studio, right? Essentially, that's the mix that we are dealing with here to offer the programming from August. We are, however, currently giving consideration to modifying that a little bit further in light of the fact of the very recent numbers, despite the uptick that we've seen in the last couple of weeks since perhaps the beginning of August. You know, we've been seeing some shifts here as well. So we're monitoring it closely. But what I've laid out for you there is essentially the framework that we're proposing to work with from this semester.
Now, the proposals that you all are working towards, have you all been speaking with students? And if so, what have they been saying about these proposals?
Right, yeah, man. What we've attempted to do is we have, since March, we would normally have, as part and parcel of our relationship with students, some meetings that are scheduled that are called students deans meetings, right? Students, the heads of schools meet with each year, group once per se, and have a conversation. And that is separate and apart from their academic advising. Each year group and pathway, because we have 2 pathways at the School of Drama, one going into education, the other one going into acting, right? So there's drama and education for the people who we are training to be teaching artists in the discipline of theater. And then we have the theater arts acting track for the people who we're hoping we can graduate as actors, as performers. So they have their own, each year group for the 4-year program has and each year group per pathway has an advisor. But we also have these things called dean's meetings where we meet with each year group as a whole have conversations about, how you're progressing, etc., etc., etc. Since COVID, what we've done is we've had that online as part of the last semester. But what we've also been doing is trying to stay in touch with students via instant messaging like WhatsApps and that kind of stuff, keeping them up to date on exactly how things are progressing, and also attempting to do Zoom meetings so that we could, continuously get feedback. We've also done a couple of surveys as well, because this whole COVID thing is not simply about how we manage numbers in a studio. It is also about the social and economic impact, the extent to which somebody would be able to come to school this semester, the fact of internet connectivity, and then bearing in mind that because we are doing studio work, that is ultimately going to require, when we do the distance part of the work, data intensive type applications, that some students need to be prepared for it. Like what kind of internet connection you have at home, and and do you have it or not? If you do have it, can you get it? If you might not be able to get it, then what does that mean? So we've been having those kinds of conversations continuously. Zoom, 2 surveys between March and now to
Okay, you're broken up on us a bit, but one of the things that you're speaking about in terms of being able to deal with the masterclass, and I still am wondering how y'all are going to deal with that challenge, because if you look at just the nuances, so say, okay, well, we're dealing with a frame, a window like this because we're dealing with television, versus you're able to make larger movements because you're doing work for stage. How do you get those things across in a manner that you're able to get feedback from your students saying, okay, yes, it seems as though you understand what I'm telling you. How do you do that? Okay, Marvin? Okay, it seems as though we have lost him, so we take a break, we come back with more. Stay right here. We are speaking with Marvin George, Dean at the School of Drama, Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts in Jamaica. And we're looking at education from different angles. So stay with us, we will be back. Welcome back. We're speaking with Marvin George, Dean of the School of Drama at Edna Manley College of Visual and Performing Arts. Now, before we took the break, I was asking the question, Marvin, how do you communicate nuance to students and get feedback to say, okay, well, yes, I think you're understanding it? Right.
Okay. Since we've made that switch to Zoom as an emergency response in March, and then now in a more structured way, there are a couple of things that we've been playing with. The first, of course, is that we've when you will have to do that, we'll have to revisit course outlines and do some kind of amendment to the learning outcomes, because we have to begin with one particular understanding, and that is that the theater is essentially a live art. And the minute you move it to an online medium, even at the point of training, then you're interfering with what is at the core of the art form itself. However, there are fundamental principles, for example, about voice work and acting work that can still be communicated inside of a Zoom classroom. One is that because you're dealing with the Zoom in a live, and by live I mean we are all online at the same time, synchronous, right? As a synchronous session, what you're doing is that the lecturer is dealing with the Zoom almost interactively, like dealing with the monitor as though the student is in the classroom. What we've also done as part of that preparation, for example, is have conversations with students about how to use their camera phones and how to use their devices, so we can have the kind of studio engagement we would like to have, even though we might be doing the work remotely, right? We've also spent time so that there's a sense of viewing the work of the actor, the student actor, while she or he is at work, and and also being able to give feedback while that work is happening. We've also spent time asking our lecturers to participate in a number of online training webinars on how to teach theater and how to teach voice using this kind of I was not teleconferencing, but video conferencing technology, so that we could overcome some of the initial hurdles that we might have encountered in March when we were doing it solely as an emergency response. So in many ways, we've been workshopping, how to make technology work for us. Some of the stuff we found out because we went to webinars where people were, a little bit more accustomed to the work, and then some of it we found out through our own experimentation from the emergency response of March into May. So there's a balance. Now I'm saying that ultimately and invariably there are some things that you're going to lose in working in the distance mode. But I'm also saying that insofar as we've had the rehearsal for it between March and May, and then the webinars and training that we've been doing since then, that we feel a little bit more comfortable, more comfortable in approaching it now as an online thing. And then, of course, we've also satisfied what we know we cannot avoid, which is the time is not going to allow us to do certain things. So, insofar as we have the studio as the second encounter, that there are some things we feel we can satisfy in the studio. We have also even planned, that's what Plan D now, Plan D the situation if there's such a thing. That is to say, if we find ourselves, for example, going online fully this semester, depending on what happens with the current uptick in the cases that are being reported, that we do supplemental work with the students as they progress towards their final year, when things clear up. So we've already built into our, we're building in our to our programming these supplementary intensive workshops for what we think might have been lost in the time when we could not have done a full live encounter.
And it's nice to see, that there's that level of proactive thought and work going into it. Incidentally, someone else I was speaking with was sharing the view that invariably you will lose elements because of the lack of face-to-face interaction. But what the person also said is that when he was able to go back out between these two waves that we've had in Trinidad and Tobago, he found himself being able to impart knowledge better because of having to do so via Zoom. So it's almost as though he was able to ramage when it was time for, when he was able to physically interact. But I will say though, in terms of building capacity, you have recently been part of Education, the Remix. What was that about and what was it like?
Okay, yeah, man. It's an online conference, as you know. So much is happening because of COVID, and I don't simply mean the fallout. I mean, we just finding innovative ways to make contact and to have conversation that we should have just had. So it was a Zoom conference looking at the state of education in this particular context, and the panel that I was on is a panel that was focused specifically on the business of arts and culture in schools, not only not only COVID related implications for arts and culture in schools, but arts and culture in the broadest sense, and its relevance, its impact, its value, its centrality, as it were, right, to whatever education we have in schools, and regardless of the level. That panel consisted of the moderator is the Edna Manley College Director of Marketing, and then we had the Director of Studies for the School of Dance, Neela Banks. We also had on that panel Michael Sean Harris, who is the Head of Department for Performance at the School of Music, and then Delia Harris, who is a media person, but also an actor and producer. So she's coming from the commercial theater, and then myself representing the School of Drama. And what we're doing is taking different perspectives in this whole conversation. So like Neela was talking about the business of Neela's focus in that session was on multiple intelligences and the varying or various kinds of competencies, understandings, and learnings that can be developed through the kind of work we do in arts and culture in the classroom or in schools. Michael's approach was about he focused a lot on almost like Neela, but with less conversation on multiple intelligence, the Howard Gardner theory, focusing on the centrality of arts in schools, given the kinds of skills that people can develop as a result of it. Delia Harris, she delved so beautifully into culture. Really very simple. She was moving in between a production, so she kind of ran away from the production, joined us a little bit, jump in her car, zoom in, and then offer this thing and left. And she was dealing with what is culture, and the value of culture for young people in trying to make sense of education in the broadest sense. My own contribution to the conversation was I had a kind of singular focus. I tried to focus on reparations because I feel that the conversation on culture in the classroom is a conversation on the conversation of arts in schools. Sorry, is first and foremost a conversation on the centrality of culture to Caribbean life. We are very performance-based societies, So I took a kind of approach discussing the beginning of what the modern Caribbean might be, and what is performative, or what carries that performance punch in our history, and how that might inform any idea or concept of what we think the Caribbean is, and then why art is central there. That was really it's that kind of conversation. So it wasn't really COVID specific, but really dynamic in its layers, really interesting stuff.
All right, so we want to thank you so much, Marvin. And have you seen any dip in numbers with regard to people applying to Edna Manley? What is that looking like? Do you have any idea at this point?
Yeah, well, I know we came out of an academic body thing last week. I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but I know for example that the School of Drama at its current capacity with the two pathways, and also in our own quest to maintain international standards, we don't go beyond 24 persons per year as an intake. We don't take more than 24. Because when you go into a studio, you could give the right kind of interaction between lecturer and student, right? It's not a lecture hall with 100 people in it. It's studio works, and you're working with bodies, so you want a particular kind of relationship in the room. So we don't go beyond 24. And as at last week Wednesday.
So thank you for that information, and hopefully we're able to have more conversation with you. We just spoke with Marvin George, Dean of School of Drama, Edna Manley College of Visual Performance and Arts. Thank you so much, Mr. George. And we want to thank you as well for tuning in and joining us this evening. On behalf of the entire news team, good night.